So, something that has developed, when has this baseline testing been developed?
Oh, over 10 years ago.
Over the last 10 years ago, right? So again, when I played 2001-ish, my college days, we did not necessarily have that baseline testing. But something now, not all parents know about baseline testing. I want to talk a little bit about what it entails and why ideally every single athlete in these higher risk sports should be getting baseline testing. So what does it entail?
So baseline testing is how are we going to know how your brain is functioning when you have a concussion if we don't have that data when your brain is working fine, when it's not injured. So baseline testing assesses your brain function. It's all about the brain function, and it assesses, it's a quick, about 30-40 minutes or so of a computerized test, and it assesses 5 different functions of the brain. So different types of memory, your reaction time, your processing speed, how well mentally you're able to process information, as well as your impulse control.
So that's about 45 minutes. This is a well-established, standardized test,
Yes.
well-researched,
Yes.
and it is specifically designed to assess how well the brain functions in a healthy individual, so that if they have a traumatic injury, a concussion, some point later, that we can go back and say, can you get as close to this as possible? Yes?
Correct.
So talk a little bit about the grading. So how far off, or if they're 5% off from that baseline, 5% worse, is that enough to, so that follow-up testing is then to determine if they're past the danger zone of the concussion, right? Because after a concussion happens, the effects last for generally up to a month.
It can.
It can last up to a month. And one of the more dangerous things, this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is getting a second concussion as the brain is healing.
Absolutely.
Right? Think about getting like a scab, right? If it's not fully healed, that's going to open back up and possibly be worse and get more scarred down if you didn't let it fully heal. So we really want to make sure it's fully healed. One way we can tell it's fully healed is if that score is close to baseline, but yet how close to baseline do we need it to be to get back to play or to say it's healed?
Well, there is a statistical analysis that occurs between the baseline and the post-testing, and it's a lot of training. I can't really go through in terms of the details.
Right. We don't need the exact number, but is it within 5%? Does it have to kind of be
within about the same range? So, for example, if somebody is scoring in the average range, let's say average is 92, 109. So when they have the concussion, they need to be within about the same range, say 90 to 109. I'm just throwing a number so that you'll understand, objectively.
I'm just going to say, for anyone watching this, we're just going to trust her. So we don't necessarily need to fully understand the scoring, but it's determining, we're saying my child or I have a concussion. We have our baseline testing, whatever those numbers are, let's call it 72. I like that number for some reason. That's the score. 72 was the baseline number. I now have a concussion. It's been 2 weeks. My symptoms are mostly better, but I'm going to go in for this follow-up testing to compare to the 72. If I'm sort of close to that 72, and I could be above, I could be below, but there is a range really. It's not just exactly 72, if I understand correctly. And so if I'm close enough to within that normal range or that original range, not just normal compared to others, but compared to my healthier self pre-concussion, that's what we're looking for to determine that my brain is healed enough. Yes? About right?
That, as well as, are you able to do the same functions you could do before? For example, are you able to, say, doing practice, ride the bike for 45 minutes without getting any symptoms? Are you able to, run down the field without getting headache, without getting disoriented? So it's not just the score itself. It's important to keep that in mind.
So in terms of return to play, you're saying it's a slower return. Would you recommend doing the retest of the baseline first, and then you reintroduce to practice or riding the bike for 45 minutes, or is it What's the protocol there, or
So usually
recommended?
it's a stepwise protocol, meaning that you will start very slowly on doing simple tasks. Are you able to?
But do you? I understand that, but is that something that you would provide a protocol for? Because you have an individual who comes in. So again, let's say it's me. I had the concussion 2 weeks ago, or suspected concussion. My symptoms are mostly better. I feel like I'm ready to return. Do I just take it upon myself to start returning, and then as things maybe I do feel a little weird off, is that when I go see you, or should I go see you as soon as that concussion happens and we have a conversation? That's the question I guess we're trying to get at.
California passed a law in 2017 which mandates that no one can go back to play unless they're cleared by a doctor, a healthcare provider who is either a doctor who is specialized in concussion or has expertise in concussion care, and they can't go back.
That's you. Just a point, making sure they know she counts as that.
Someone.
But yeah, so not just a normal emergency room visit. If they go to the emergency room at any point, which a lot of parents might be inclined to do, and they go and they say, my child's had a concussion, what do I do? I want them to be returned to play. The doctor in the emergency room, unless they have, and they luck out and happen to get a doctor who has special training in this, they're most likely not going to find someone with that specialized training. So they'll have to seek out somebody like Dr. Kalinian and get that clearance, correct?
Correct.
And that is only if, by law, by this California law, only if they have a diagnosed concussion.
Correct.
So yeah, so there's a lot of layers to all this. It looks like.
Yeah.
But the important thing,
simple.
the important thing I think to take home for anyone watching, especially with children playing any of these sports that have a higher risk, is getting the baseline testing is a tremendous way to ensure that if this does happen, it's insurance. It gives us so much more data to safely return to play later on. I want to come back and talk about a little bit of what happens, the long-term effects if concussions do not get treated right or the return to play is off. So let's talk about that in a second.